Hey guys, Buckeye Bar Guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Today is Saturday, April 10th. John, how you doing today?
Mike, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So we big show today. Going to probably be a quick show. Just got a couple press conferences we want to go over, and we are going to talk about the secondary at the end of towards the end of the show, the back end of the show. Just a couple things we wanted to get through. First, we made an announcement this weekend that we are starting a new newsletter that's going to get released once a week to start with. I'm hoping to move that up to a couple times a week as we get going with it. But the newsletter, actually, the first publication date will be released on Monday, April 19th. So it's the Monday after the spring game. So it's a week from this coming Monday. So buckeyebartalk.substack.com. We will have links in the notes for this one. So sign up. It's free. You go to it, put your email address in, and then every time we release an email, an update, you'll get an email newsletter. It's a pretty cool feature. I follow a couple of Substack writers and good stuff. It'll be a new way for us to be able to throughout the week, for fans, the loyal fans of the show, if people that really want to get more information from us, it'll be a nice way for us to give out more information.
Awesome. Yeah. And you had said, it's going to be 2 days after the spring game. So I think we've actually gotten to the point that the only thing that's going to mess with that spring game is going to be weather.
Yeah.
We're going to have a spring game unless we have like terrible thunderstorms.
Yeah. So a week from today is the spring game. We are looking forward to that. We will have we're going to release our pre-spring game show on Friday. Mm-hmm. We'll do it Friday night, so it should be up and ready to go by the time spring game actually comes around. And then we will do a post-spring game thing on Sunday. And
it's going to be great. We're going to see some live bullets out there, and then we get to wait another 4 months until we get to see it again.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's something, and it was the something we didn't get last year, and so at least we're getting that something this year. So I'm looking forward to it. They have actually released a couple videos this week in the last couple weeks, but so they're clips, and we know that they're picking great plays. I'm sure we're not seeing the dud plays that these young guys are doing, but all three quarterbacks, I've seen them look good in these clips. Henderson and Pryor both look really, really good. I'm really impressed with the stuff I saw from Henderson.
We're talking like, what is it? Maybe a 10-second clip at most, but it's not. That's a decent run he had, and just the shiftiness got outside of that tackle and took it to the house.
He already looks like a college running back, though. Like when I saw him, I'm like, man, and we date ourselves. We're older, and that. But we've been watching this for a while. But when I saw him run, I'm like, that's Maurice Claret. And
well, yeah, and he's definitely, if you think about Maurice when he came there too, and looking back now, I don't think you'd ever be like, oh, Maurice was like an explosive running back. But Maurice did run for what, like 270 yards or no, not that. What, it was like 215, right? He torched, is it Washington State?
Yeah, but
his first game he runs for like 180 or something like that.
Yeah, that was
because Dobbins passes him.
Yeah, it's 3 touchdowns in that first game against Texas Tech, and then against Washington State he has 200 and something. It was a great season that whole year, but that's what when I remember watching. And you don't have wall to wall coverage is all this stuff, but I remember just clips of him. In practices and spring games of him running. I'm like, and that's who Henderson reminded me of. And I'm just like.
And it's a fully loaded room in front of him. But when I saw him run, again, it's just a clip. I know that. But, I'm thinking, I see that. I'm thinking Maurice Claret. I'm thinking J.K. Dobbins. I'm seeing someone that can contribute right away.
Yeah, Beanie. I don't Beanie's a different size.
I don't necessarily see like Ezekiel Elliott that had that Carlos Hyde in front of him. That you had that person. Like, I think we can get some good reps right away.
The difference between him and Zeke, and this is not taking any. Zeke. Zeke's a monster. Zeke, there was a lot of things Zeke had to work on his body size, before he was really ready to take off.
Sure.
His numbers were starting, his star level was coming up it was a steal when Ohio State got him. He was a 3-star when Ohio State got him. He was a 4-star, by the time he walked onto campus. He had a great senior season. It was like they saw something in him that a lot of other universities didn't see at that point. And, even Alabama was trying to get him on campus. And, his senior year, Missouri was really pushing the family ties towards the end. There was a thought there he might leave. And, but Zeke, you knew you had at least a year's worth of that Zeke needed to do some work in, with Mick and to get this guy. Henderson, he looks like he's already there. Now, can he bring up the next steps of what Zeke did? Zeke was that great blocker, had great vision, great running back. He, as tough as a player as you can get in college football. So that's the next step for Henderson. Can he get to those phases if he's ever going to eclipse somebody like a Zeke or a J.K. Dobbins? But
from what we've read and heard, it sounds like yes, though. Yeah. Sounds like he's impressing on all areas of the game right now.
Exactly. So definitely, I love when these clips come out. Like I said, we know they're clips and stuff like that, but it just gets you more juiced up for spring.
I think you saw, if I'm not remembering incorrectly, I think it was a Legend Cavazos broke up a pass, which, I'm excited for that guy. We're going to talk about him a little bit today, later on in the show. I think there's a Lathan Ransom interception. So there's a lot of stuff to be excited about. And again, you don't want to get too excited about short little 5-second clips of plays, but man, it's awesome to see Buckeye football.
Yeah. We're tickled to death about it. Just one bit before we get into the press conferences. So the press conferences, we'll start with the offensive line press conference, and then we'll go into defense line. So Stud and LJ talked this week. But before we get into Stud, so Max Ray, he did enter the transfer portal this week. It's tough. He did. Yeah, he was one of the guys that got in last year when
he played against Michigan State
when we needed the depth issues, and he was impressive. It's just, this is all as Tud talks about his press conference, and we'll talk about here in a minute. This is a large room, and the depth issues that they had 3 years ago ain't there anymore. That they're just loaded to bear. So I think he was getting a little lost in the shuffle. He's I think a really good talent. He's going to be very impressive for somebody. Somebody's going to get really lucky to get him, and
someone will probably have a day one starter.
Yeah, so best of luck to him. I don't really I don't get all beat up over and stuff like that. I know it's kind of like a business. These guys, they're looking for their futures, and these guys want to go play somewhere, and I understand that, and that's why I don't try to get too mixed up and mad at the kids, because I try to think about if I was in their shoes, and because you sometimes you see especially a lot, it seems with older fans that you should be loyal to your team.
Yeah, they don't really understand what these kids are like.
But they're possibly giving up their chance of playing in the NFL to be loyal to their team and sit on a bench. So I get that too. And I get the sentiment feelings about it. And there was a time in my life that I kind of felt that same way, that I didn't like when you heard about kids sitting out of bowl games and stuff like that. But as the years have went on, I realized that, these they're looking out for what their best interest.
Right.
I went to college to get a career.
Exactly.
So these guys, and that's kind of the way I look at it now. These guys are in college to go to get a career, and they want that career to be NFL. It might end up being something else someday later, but they want their first shot to be at the NFL. So, and the only way he's going to get the NFL, Max Ray, is he's
got to play.
He needs to put tape out there. Right. So you're
not going to get drafted. And, I don't want to give away, their content that we pay for, but that actually just makes me think, because I like Buckeye Talk, they had put out that there was actually a question posed about, how many guys that only started 1 year at tackle, they end up being, successful, high drafted NFL draft picks. Well, how many guys that don't have any tape get drafted at all?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he needs to go somewhere and put out the tape. So yeah, anybody that has an issue with the kid transferring, it's just grow up, get over yourselves. Like, it's not 1940 anymore. Like, the kids, they have to do what's best for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, talking about into offensive line. So Stud just talked this week. His press conference, it was about 20 minutes. It wasn't, Stud is not even though he was pretty jolly, he's somebody did make a comment. I can't remember which reporter, that he is in mid-season form. I mean, his voice was really gruff and scratchy. So, you could tell that
he was yelling a little bit.
He's been yelling a little bit, but he, I know that press conferences aren't necessarily his favorite thing. He's probably out of all the coaches, the ones that I think likes it the least.
Yeah.
But he came out there. He gave a good press conference. I've been excited about this offensive line, partially because of the guys that did coming back. But the depth is finally there. That a couple years ago I know we didn't have a show then, but we talked about that. This depth is scary. What's Stud doing? They need to recruit better. I mean, in the first couple of years of Ryan Day being the head coach, it's about really addressing those numbers. That's been like priority number one, and they've done it, and they've got a lot of talent in there. I mean, I know some people have said about Stud that, there's not that 5-star guy that maybe LJ gets on the defensive line, or maybe now that we're getting in the receiver room, but there's a lot of good talent here. And,
but he technically did. The guy's just not on campus yet.
Yeah. And they have with offensive lines, it's sometimes, even with the big 5-star guys, unless you're an Orlando Pace, one of those level guys, it's usually, for a lot of these guys, it takes a couple years
to you got to grow into your body,
it's just a different game at offensive line. For whatever reason, it's easier to transition for defensive lines than it is for offensive lines. You see more impactful freshmen normally at the defensive line. It still takes time.
Well,
but
I think there goes something with, like I was saying, you can kind of transition into your body. A lot of times when the guys are like, if they're big enough to start as a lineman, as a freshman, offensive lineman, offensive tackle, a lot of times they might be overweight with that. It's true. Like it's true. A lot of times it might just be, the wrong weights on them, and that they gotta, lose that and put the right weight back on. Like MPF came in way undersized, and it took years to get him up to where they wanted him to be.
Yeah, exactly. So he started off with the press conference. He was asked about center. So Luke Whippler, Matt Jones, and Jacob James, the young guy, they are all have been doing reps at center. With the first two, Whippler and Jones, doing the majority of the reps. He said James is getting in there some, but it sounds like they're all getting reps. He said they've all looked pretty good. They've been playing tough. They're really, he made a lot of good comments about Whippler and Matt, that they're really starting to understand a lot of the mental parts of the game, paying attention to being students, studying everything. So it seems like, Harry's obviously injured right now. It seems like, for whatever reason, that we have a much better situation possibly going into center than, if this was a couple years ago, that could be a little nerve wracking that Harry wasn't playing because, well, he's the next guy. And now it seems like there's choices. And, for some reason, one of these guys could end up beating out Harry because they're getting work there. And Stud didn't outright say that in the press conference, but he alluded to it a couple times that, things can happen. Harry's hurt right now. And I'll get to Harry in a minute when he talks about Harry. Actually, we'll do it right now. Somebody did ask him if they are assuming Harry will be in the mix when he's healthy to play. And he's like, yeah, I assume that Harry is going to be one of my 5 best guys. He's like, but these other guys are playing really, really well right now. They're playing tough. They're being gritty. They're understanding the positions. They're working their butts off. So he's like, Harry's going to be a little bit behind, and, we'll see what happens. But, he did say, I feel confident. I have 6-7 guys now that really, be there that, I have my first guys off the bench if.
Well, and I'm interested to see if Harry can win his way back at center. Do they even want to really put him into that center competition? Do they want to just focus him at guard now?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're missing this, this time, and Matthew Jones, he showed he's a fine guard. I mean, we saw him in limited action last year. He looked great. And if Matt Jones proves that he could be a legit awesome center, and the guy is strong as a bull, like, you might as well just keep Harry at guard and don't even add him into the mix. Just have those three that are already taking the snaps, keep taking the snaps.
Yeah. So that will be the interesting to see what happens with Harry, because it sounds like all these guys are impressive. And there's one spot in the guard positions that are now gone, because I'll get to Paris here in a minute. It sounds like everybody's loving what they're seeing out of him. And he was very impressive at the end of last year, and it seems like that's going to be a very easy transition for him. And, the stay at the guard position right now.
It sounds like Paris Johnson might be the most naturally gifted lineman that they've had come in since I won't say any names, but maybe since the mid 90s.
Yeah, he could be there.
Early mid 90s.
He's very gifted. You can tell he definitely. I don't know if he could play center, but he can definitely play two positions. He might be able to play all three positions on the line, which is like.
Hopefully that doesn't happen, because
I'm sure he would be an emergency. That would be an emergency. I don't think that's ever going to be their goal. Obviously the goal is of ultimately, get him pushed out to one of the outside positions next year. But
like shades of 2018, Michael Jordan snapping the ball.
Yeah. So he talked about then Josh Fryer in Paris. So, he's been extremely impressed. They both have come down to play guards and into the interior. Basically what he said about both of them, the reason why they're transitioning so well to guard is that, they both have great athleticism. They're both mentally tough. They're physical. They're, everything that you're looking for guard. It's playing guard and tackle are two different positions where, you and he even said it, you got to sometimes, the tackles are kind of the glory guys, you're going up against the ends, but there's just something about a toughness that you have to be able to play
absolutely
guard, because you are mixing it up with the big boys.
That's inside. A dog fight.
And, and usually, you got both the middle linebacker, you got your big tackles. And it's a lot of fighting in there in the middle. So it's a different type of toughness you need to play inside.
And not every defensive tackle, some big, dude. Sometimes you get little, like, I'd say little, is still be taller than me, but like 6'1" dudes that are, freaking state wrestlers that.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily, an easy thing. You do have to have a different mental toughness play down there. And he said they have it. They're gritty. They're mixing it up with people. And it sounds like they're both very transitioning well. So Fryer, that gives them another option now. It seems like Stud said a lot of things, a couple different questions. He came back to him. And so it seems like that he's really impressing people now, and he's going to be in those.
Now he's the one that was a little bit ahead of everybody last year, right?
I think so.
The young group of guys.
Yeah. So
I think it is.
So
Jacob Fryer.
I think he said Josh Fryer.
Josh Fryer.
Yeah. So So I'm impressed to see for the first time. It sounds like not only you got, because he's even talked about Dwan's looking really good, and a couple of the tackles. So it seems like now there's a lot of depth going around in all these positions. And, he does, I'll get to it in a minute. He does talk about, it's nice to have guys that can play multiple positions, because it makes his job a lot easier. And these are guys that are, even though they're not really playing out of position, because, they're good at both positions. Like these guys, inside guys can play guard and center. Outside guys can play tackle and guard. And he's like, it's giving him a lot of options so that he can find his 5 best guys and put them. That's your starting line. Going off of Paris, he was asked about, as he thought, did he ever consider moving Munford and MPF down and letting Paris, he came in to play a tackle. He's one of the highest decorated tackles.
Sure.
But
so is MPF.
So is MPF. They were both the same thing. So, and this is not the first time this question has come up a couple times in spring with Coach Day a couple times. So, like, what was the reasoning not trying to move one of them? He basically said, hey, these are two of the best tackles in the country last year. I mean, they barely gave up any sacks. And
did they give up any sacks?
I don't think they did, but I mean, I'm not going to go back and they could have. I mean,
right.
But
I mean, it's all possible.
There's nothing that comes to mind.
Justin Fields he holds the ball for a day and a half. So
he might have got blamed for, I mean, they could have got blamed for one of them. And, but he said that, the difference though is that right now Paris is he actually bends just a little bit better than those guys. Those guys are used to being upright and you playing the tackles, and Paris is used to being down a little bit more, getting to pad levels. And he said the same thing about Fryer. These guys are just more bendy, and that, and that was a lot of the reasons. And he did allude there a little bit to I think that might've been, I think this is probably more directed towards MPF, that, that mental toughness, that grit, that, if any of them are suited to play, like they were never going to move Munford down because the guy came back, he wants to showcase himself.
He did you a solid. You're not going to move him to guard.
Yeah. So it was really between MPF and Paris. And I just think Paris is better suited to play guard than MPF is. So, and
MPF didn't give up any sacks last year. I don't know why you would move him out of tackle.
Exactly. So I think they're happy where they're, and Paris showed in that Clemson game that, against people. I mean, I've heard some people say, well, those were young guys he went up against because, Clemson's line was young. He was young too.
Yeah,
so
he's a young dude.
He hasn't gotten to his full capabilities even yet. So, I mean, and he was manhandling those guys. So like, he's fine. Like I liked him when he was decleating people and pancaking people. And
I don't know. I don't imagine how highly rated he was coming out of high school if he does only play 1 year at tackle, because he's for sure going to be your starting, tackle the following year, probably left tackle.
Yeah, he's going to be starting left tackle.
Because I'm guessing you're probably, health, everything goes as planned. Everything goes as it went last year. I'm guessing you're losing both tackles this year.
I would agree with that.
I don't think MPF is going to come back for his extra year of eligibility. So, I mean, I think, you're going to get Paris as a tackle, and I think he'll do fine. I think I don't think it's going to affect his draft status at all that he only played 1 year.
And, so he'll play 1 year, and, they still got guys like Dewan and Josh Fryer. They have other guys now in the program that are mixing up in multiple positions. And they're going to recruit tackles.
Right.
I mean, we're not even talking about the guy. They'll get somebody for this coming season. And, that's life. That's what happens.
And you know what? I mean, no matter how good you are, offensive line, there is no guarantee when it comes to offensive line that you're 3 and done.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, look at Munford. I mean, nobody would say that. I mean, we were completely surprised when he came back. So, going off of Paris, we'll go into the tackles now. So he was asked on Nick, and, he said basically the biggest thing they're working on with Nick is last year's focus was you got to be a better pass blocker, and let's work on pass blocking. And he's like, he was one of the best pass blockers in the country. He's like, this year it's about getting you lower. He's not as quite bendy as they want him to be. Get lower, get better into better pad level, because now we want you to be one of the best run blockers in the country. And so that's the big focus with Nick. It sounds like Nick's having a really good spring, and he's like, Nick knows what he has to do, and so he's doing a good job at it. Thayer, he had his back surgery a couple years ago. He hurt his back, and they said even though he had a good season the following year, it wasn't up to his expectations or even up to their expectations. He was behind. He was about 8 months behind. Mm-hmm. And, that's a lot of the reason why he felt like he needed another year, that he needed so he can showcase himself, that he hasn't really got up to that point because that back surgery put him 8 months behind in his, and then you had a COVID season last year, which put everybody behind. So he hasn't had any time to really catch himself up. And that's why one of the biggest reasons why he wanted to come back, which I completely get that now. Too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially, the type of money he could get if he could turn himself into a day one, early day one left tackle. And there's a possibility he could. I mean, he's a really good left tackle, and, left tackles, they are not easy to come by, and that's why they get big money. And so,
well, not guys, and not guys that have started 4 years at left tackle.
So
getting healthy, in the perfect shape to do what he can do in the pros, getting better every day. Like, yeah, Thayer might actually, like, he might come out of there as like a real, like, mid, maybe even before mid first round pick if he has a great year.
Yeah. Then they got into they talked about he talked about how young they are. They said, he was asked about, how these guys, the young guys, are focusing. Maybe he was asked how are they looking at anything about the quarterback competition, and he basically said they don't have any time to look at what's going on in the quarterback room. He's like, I have 11 guys that this is their first spring because of the kids that lost their spring last year. He's like, so he's like, I'm just glad we've had 9 solid practices and that we are, they're all looking good. They're making the mistakes they need to make. They're correcting the mistakes they want to. But he said they're all hungry and these kids want to learn. And, the great thing is that they're just all like, they're constantly calling him and texting him and, wanting the workouts. He joked, I forget which one he joked about. He said, there's one, I told him that, you need to leave now. I want to go. I'm
going home.
Be like, get out of my office. I think it was on Paris, and he's like, Paris is in my office. And there's times I want to kick him out of my office because we've watched enough film. And so, and funny. That's a joke. I mean, anything about these coaches, they live for that stuff too. So I'm sure they love that.
They all love to teach.
So he's and that's where you go into a lot of this depth. That's where he's really happy about. And he said, Coach Day has been running these that basically he's getting 3 groups in at every position level to, work. And then, Day said that's his goal to get as many reps as possible for everybody. And
you definitely can use that year as really like advantageous toward, you can get guys like meaningful reps in practice.
Yeah.
Where they would be sitting around normally watching first and second team.
Yeah. So, and that's glad to hear. I mean, that's what, Day said at his pre-spring press conference, that it's about reps. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like that's what he's doing. And they're running 3 teams deep, and, he's getting them all in as much as possible because, and because they lost so much time last year, and it's time to start making up for that time. He did say on, let's see where we go next. He did say on DeJuan, he said he was, best shape he's been in his life or in a long time. But he's been a little banged up the last couple of days, but he does expect him back.
Yeah.
He does expect him back within the spring. It's just that, that's what happens. Springs, you get hurt.
I think DeJuan, honestly, he's a wild card to me. I think he's probably going to be your best, 6th man in the country.
Well,
he is so dominant when he gets on those lines, how much space that he takes up on those defensive lines.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, if he's physically ready to play, you got to have him on the field.
And that's another thing. That's where this depth is really going to help. I think this will be first time in a long time that we're going to say that they're going to be a legitimate 2 deep
everywhere.
I'm trying to think when the last time we could say it. I mean, there was a couple of Trustle's 05-06 lines where he ran 2 deep through games, and there was probably a couple Meyer lines that it's just that they were deep. It's just there was a stretch in now in this where they haven't had a lot of depth, and this is really the first time in a long time. I think they're going to have 10 legitimate offensive linemen that are going to be ready to play.
I think this is going to be the best depth that they've had in quite some time.
I mean, which is a good thing because, especially if you can kind of get all those guys on the same page. So, I mean, you don't rotate offensive linemen like you do defensive linemen, but if you can get 8 to 10 guys on the same page, that way, if somebody goes down, it's easy to plug the next guy in.
Right. And like you said, you don't rotate them like you do with the defensive line, but what is there ever a bigger oh crap moment than, outside of maybe like a quarterback, running back, whatever, than when a starting offensive lineman goes down, when their knee gets rolled up and you're like, oh my God, we pretty much just had we have a hole on our offensive line now.
And unless it's the only times that my pits in my stomach that I really get that drop in the pit in my stomach is when Justin Fields went down a couple of times, that against Michigan and against Clemson.
Clemson this year for sure.
It was it really hurt. And then Nick Bosa, when he went down, normally outside of that, I'm pretty okay. Like, I don't like it when it's a legitimate starter. Like Chris Olave, he gets hurt, he goes out. I'm like, that sucks. But there's a lot of great guys behind him, and it's time somebody needs to step up. And but yeah, when an offensive lineman goes down, and it doesn't matter on what position,
it doesn't matter who,
because it's like, oh my god, who's our backup?
It's like we just have a void there now. Now you might as well just hand them a sack every play.
So I mean, and that is absolutely the truth. And I don't like that when that happens. But that's why I really think they could have some legitimate backups here. And we saw that against Michigan State. He talked about that. That was really the first time that you got to see that their depth is really back now in the program, and they have legitimate guys that can step up when people get sick or get hurt or whatever. And so, I mean, it's nice to see, and I'm super excited about that. And then I'm going to finish up on the just on young guys. So Chrisman and Michalski, is that, I can't remember how to pronounce
Mikowski?
Yeah. So they are playing too, because of that. You're rotating 3 guys in, and he basically just said that they just need to, basically it's just working with techniques with those guys. It's that he's not really looking for a lot. He's just get the techniques down that you need to have, the fundamentals down, and then you'll start progressing from there. And he said that they're looking really good. And then he was asked about Donovan Jackson, who's the guy we still got to get him in. I mean, he's one of the best offensive linemen in the country.
Right.
And he's going to be coming in the summer. And he said, hey, he's kind of what they did with Harry, when Harry was coming in and wasn't there with them, that, he's sending in drill tapes to them, and they're talking, they're doing Zoom calls, and they're talking, and they're interacting with each other. And he's like, he's looking good. He's like, we're excited pretty much to get him in. And he's going to be, every opportunity to see what he can do come summer. And so we'll see.
I mean, that guy is one of, if not the highest rated guard in the country, he is one of them. So I think he will be immediate contributor. Not a starter. You got enough in front of him that you don't need him to be Michael Jordan, but I am definitely really excited to see what that guy can do.
Yeah. So just the finish up on that is that, and we talked about when we did our offensive line breakdown a couple of weeks ago, I'm really excited about the offensive line. And I really think that I don't think this offensive line is going to be like the 14 offensive line coming into the season, where there was just so many question marks. And then you saw the Virginia Tech game, and it's like, man, how many games are we going to drop this year? Because the line's just not ready. I mean, this is not this line, even with losing those guys in the middle, that because Munford came back and really put an anchor on that line that they have. And now you just see where the depth is starting to take over, that there is literally 2, and in some cases 3 guys almost at every one of these positions that possibly could start. And so that is exciting.
Well, right. And like I said, if anyone's struggling, plug DeJuan Jones in there. He can take up an entire defensive line himself.
Yeah. So, was definitely happy to hear about what Stud had to say, and and then you get LJ. Yeah, LJ.
And I'm very excited for that offensive line too. So Larry Johnson, him and his rushmen, they had their press conference yesterday on the 9th. So I'm gonna go a little out of order, just from I'll talk about individual players too, but he was asked about the pass rush last year, and he said, it was really hard to build, any sort of continuity because of the season that they dealt with, which of course, we all know that. They specifically asked him though, did you not get to the quarterback enough last year? And he said, well, a lot of teams, they know what we do. They scheme to get the ball out quickly, so we don't get to them in time. He said, there are things that, as a team, technique that they can work on, and he kind of broke it down. What can we do at the point of attack? What can we do to be that half step quicker so we can get home to that quarterback? He did say, though, he doesn't have issues with pressures. He said pressures, quarterbacks are throwing an errant ball out. They got a guy in their face. You get your hands up, you tip the ball. That's how interceptions happen, or great pressure. So he did say that, but he did say he would like to get home, a lot more this upcoming season, get more sacks, and that they're diagnosing that stuff, and he feels like it's going to happen, which kind of led into, Tyreek Smith only having 1 sack, but it did not feel like Tyreek Smith only had 1 sack last year. And he said the same thing, Tyreek was one of those guys that, because Ryan Day put it out there. He said, if you guys want to know what you can do better. We're willing to sit down and watch every single play you played last year. And I'm pretty sure Tyreek was one of those ones that they, identified, took advantage of that. So Larry had talked with them. They went over everything. They went over where he could be quicker at the point of attack, how he can get to that quarterback faster. And he said Tyreek just, he's healthy, best he's been since he's been at Ohio State. And he definitely looks like someone that's, ready to go, ready to hit on all cylinders. And I mean, this room's going to be scary next year.
Yeah.
So he's asked about Teron Vincent. When he says Teron Vincent's finally the guy we brought here, like that is something to me. Teron Vincent was the number one defensive tackle in the country when he came to Ohio State in 2018. And he said he's finally healthy. Like people don't realize that, he had a setback last year. So he didn't get, to get stronger. He didn't get to do the workouts that he needed to do to really make that step after that injury, that second season that he had. So he's finally healthy. And he just, to kind of go off topic a little bit, he went on about Teron, though, how, Teron wasn't a baby about it. He felt horrible that he couldn't contribute, that he couldn't be his best for his teammates. He talked to his dad, like dad, Troy Vincent, for those that aren't aware of Teron's lineage. What can I do? And they laid out for him. You got to get healthy and you got to, go ball out. You got to be the man out there. And they said he's finally ready to be that guy. He's quicker. He's stronger. Everything they look for in a 3 technique. So you and I talked, a couple of weeks ago. I said maybe throw him at nose tackle. You're going to get your 2 best tackles out there. Sounds like they're only looking for him to play the 3, though. But if he's great at it, that's all you can ask for.
And that's fine. And then I'm really excited about what LJ said about Teron. That's like, if that is true, if he is now the guy and he's ready to contribute and he can take that to from spring now into an actual season, that just makes them even tougher to defend against. And then guys like Tyreek, that could be. I'm hoping that he is ready and that he really. And I think he will be. He
said he's going to be a special guy. He says he has a great first step and he's going to be a special guy.
I think he will be. This is kind of a lot of times there's always usually a lot of, you think about a lot of the LJs. The big guys aren't LJ's lines, but then a lot of people never think about what is it? The Jalen Holmeses and,
even like Sam Hubbard.
Yeah. The Sam Hubbards, the other guys that weren't the Bosas that still made a lot of, and to me, that's, there's a lot of people about Zach and, I think Tyreek could be that guy that just surprises a lot of people this year and really takes what he was brought in to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So sticking with defensive tackles, not too many questions came up about Haskell. I think it was just because Haskell kind of solidified himself last year. So there's not a whole lot of questions about him. He did mention, though, about the pressures, if you got active hands, you got guys like Haskell Garrett, because of pressure, quarterback gets the ball out quickly, throws it low. Haskell Garrett knocks the ball up to his own hand and he gets a touchdown out of it. So that's really all he talked about him. The 2 guys, other defensive tackles, nose tackles that they were talking about, though, Jerron Cage, he said, he's playing his best ball. He's strong. They talked about Antoine Jackson, excuse me, the name left me for a second. He said Antoine's, again, he's playing his best ball. Antoine's showing a lot of that quickness that you saw from like BB Landers. So he said that's something, if you're a nose tackle, you got to be strong, but you got to be really quick. You got to have quick hips. You got to have quick shoulders. And he said that Antoine's giving him all that stuff that, he's fast going either direction. And they're both very strong, he said. So it sounds like nose tackle is in good shape. Of course, he said, Tom was like a bull. You could have moved the guy, but losing Tommy was hard. He did admit that, but he feels confident around him with the other nose tackles. Zach Harrison, I think everyone's had glowing things to say about Zach Harrison. Just they said Zach's really, he's taking it to the next level. I think Zach might have came in with, Zach. Zach hadn't played a lot of high level ball where he was playing, but he came in with all these things being said about being an athletic freak, that he was so fast, strong, big. But they said he's the one that, he's really put in the work and the weight room, put in the work outside of just practice.
I kind of think, sorry,
You're fine.
I kind of think with Zach is that, so he came in, of course he's the freshman. He does have a lot of athleticism, but he never had any tape on him, like a college tape. And you're on the other side of Chase, and you're switching with Tyreek, and so there just was not a lot of attention early in his freshman season paid to him, and he made plays. He came in and made a few plays, and then as he started putting more tape out there, I think in defensive coordinators, offensive lines, they started, he's a freshman. He probably didn't have a lot of moves into his, and his bag of tricks. And so he was more blockable as the season went on. And I think that's why when, he didn't have as big as impacts, him and Tyreek, when, Chase was, being manhandled and, towards the end of that year. And then the following year, part of it is just because, I don't think they realized how much more that they had to pick up the slack because Chase was gone. I also think a lot of it had to do that they just didn't get a lot of time to work.
They lost their offseason.
And they lost an offseason. So Larry couldn't really, in actual playing situations, couldn't really beat into it. Like, you guys are the men now. You need to do this. You need to improve on this, and this. And now they're having this opportunity. They've got to play a year without Chase.
Right.
And now they get to have an off season.
Yeah. But Larry said this is the part of someone's career that he gets real excited for. Zach's out of year one. He's out of year two. He said Zach Harrison he's on the next level.
Yeah.
And I just think, what he can do athletically, I think we're going to see really huge things from him this year.
Oh, I agree.
He did. So staying in state for like the Ohio guys, because I'll transition this to something else. So Jack Sawyer, there is nothing bad to say about Jack Sawyer. He came in as a worker. He came in ready. He said he has no qualms, no issues about ever playing a freshman. We know that from Bosa's, Harrison, definitely. Chase Young. We know that from all these guys. Larry Johnson will play a freshman, and he did. He made it very clear that if you've earned your time to play on his line, he will play 6 defensive ends. He doesn't care about it. He'll do as many rotations as he needs to. If you deserve to be on the field, he's going to find time to get you on the field. And that brought into an interesting question about Ohio Town. So it was Stephen Means from Cleveland.com. Yeah, thank you. He had asked about, it really seems like they're kind of lucking out that a lot of these top end defensive ends are Ohio guys. And what Larry said about that, obviously he identified that, they wore that and that it's very easy when they're in your backyard like that. But he also said, and I never really thought about it like this, when you get like your Zach Harrisons, Jack Sawyers, or guys that are from Ohio and are good, like Tyreek Smiths. I don't know how many camps he went to, but like Jack Sawyer, he's been at camp with Larry Johnson for years. He goes to all those Ohio State camps. He's been working with Larry Johnson for years. So Jack Sawyer comes in and he knows exactly what he needs to do. He always wanted to play for Ohio State. It's an easy pitch for him. So like the out-of-state guys, the guys that don't get to work out with Larry Johnson, the guys that Larry, has to do a little bit more work with now on Zoom to try to recruit them, that he can't just he can't go visit them or anything like that, work drills with them in their backyards, show them the drills that they do. He said, that's a little bit more challenging. But I thought that was kind of interesting because I never really thought about that, because I guess that could go anywhere. Like, if you have a top receiver in Ohio, well, they go to camps, they get to work out with Brian Hartline, So hopefully Ohio classes stay strong, because that's definitely, when you have the in-state talent, you got those great guys coaching them and showing them those techniques.
Oh, that's a great point. Jack Sawyer really has, since he's been a freshman, probably since an 8th grader.
He knew where he was going.
Yeah, he's been at these camps, and, so yeah. The early stuff, and every coach is a little different. So the things that Larry Johnson's lingo, he's been using this lingo in camp, and his verbiage and how he teaches techniques. Mm-hmm. So these guys, a guy like Jack Sawyer is used to that he's already got the Larry Johnson's fundamentals down. So now he's like coming in a leg up on somebody.
Right. Absolutely.
He's now ready to progress to the next level already. So
like Jack Sawyer, maybe physically he's not a senior, but he's been working with this coach for 4 years. Yeah. Like he's more ready than a lot of guys are coming in. maybe even some guys that are in year 2 because of all the time that he's actually spent working with Larry Johnson.
Yeah.
Let me see. Just to go back, he said, Cage and Tehran are both having their best springs that they've ever had, that they both look ready. He did mention, he has 4 starting defensive ends on his defensive line. So quite the problem to have. That's awesome. Just couple closing things. They asked him what's the most important lesson that he had learned from the COVID season. And I mean, it was clear it was one word: perseverance. That you have to learn how to, keep going on when things are looking bleak, and how to adapt to situations. And he felt like, he did a good job of that, but also the young men on his team, they really learned after last year how to keep fighting, how to adapt, find different ways to be successful. And then just something unrelated to this team, but they did ask him about Jonathan Cooper. Said Jonathan Cooper is probably one of the hardest working guys that he ever saw. He believes that if he'll get the opportunity, someone will bring him into the NFL. And just the way he works, he compared him to Sam Hubbard. He's like, he'll fit into, a scheme like that, and he'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just great stuff from both of these coaches this week. I might be partial. I've always, I'm a line guy, especially on the offensive line. I mean, I love defensive line too, but just a lot of this stuff is kind of the stuff I nerd over, and just listening to some of the stuff. I really think they're in both lines are in a lot of good positions right now in spring, and there's a lot of options across the board. And what Larry said about the defensive tackles is making me feel a little bit better, because that's where some of my concerns were when we did our breakdown on the defensive line a couple weeks ago, that it was that we just have not seen a lot out of the tackle room. And, we haven't, and they've always been living in the shadows of the ends. I mean, we've had so many great ends that now have come through here, and even our second ends are, phenomenals. I mean, you look at all these guys that are playing in the NFL. I mean, a lot of them are on teams.
Exactly.
So it's just that was my concern coming in. I'm feeling better if Vincent is ready, if Tehran's ready, if Antoine Jackson's taking his next step, Cage is looking like this is his best spring ever. Then you saw last year what Haskell can do, and if you have 4 solid defensive tackles,
that's not mentioning the 2 defensive tackles they got in this year as freshmen that apparently are just
looking really good. Great. Yeah, so. I mean, if you at least get those 4 guys, and then even if you end up getting 2 more guys or 1 more guy and end up having a 4 to 5 deep defensive tackles, I mean, all right, they're in good shape, and let's go play ball.
Because I know, like, Darian Henry Young, I mean, I think he wants to play end. I think his body type, though, was kind of like he could do end or a 3. I know they're still looking for an out-of-state guy that is going to be they want a late addition that he could be an end or a 3 technique. No. So there's still a lot at play there, but I mean, that's not mentioning a ton of guys that they still have as depth too. Like, I mean, we just went over anywhere from, 6 to 10 people. And that's not even mentioning all the real potential they have behind those guys.
Again, another thing that, I mean, of course, Larry, maybe last year a little bit because the season was so weird. They didn't get to do the practice time. Last year was the only time I really had a lot of concerns about their depth on the defensive line. It's just because, I don't think they felt comfortable trying to give a bunch of people a bunch of chances, because they never got to see what they could do in practice. Well, and I think they're going to feel more comfortable, and there is a lot of depth there. Just like on the offensive line, there is a lot of depth there.
Well, I mean, when you replace, what they lost, 4 defensive linemen, because you lose Chase, and then
you lost BB,
you have 3
lost
tackles.
Hamilton,
Cornell.
Yeah.
So you lose 3 tackles and Chase Young. So I mean, it's a little nerve wracking, but if he showed, if anything, he got those guys up to speed. I mean, the only game you could probably say that they didn't look their best was that Alabama game, which we knew they had problems with health. They had COVID guys out. So, I mean, it was a great press conference. They always are with Larry Johnson, though.
Yeah. So very exciting on those press conferences. So we're going to do our final position groupings for our breakdowns. We're not going to do the specialist.
No, I don't. I don't have a good feel for that anyways.
Yeah,
right
we'll
now.
see more maybe on our post spring game because we'll actually get to see some kicks and stuff. I mean, kickers. I mean, you don't know much about kickers until seasons begin. So
Well, I mean, they got a punter on scholarship. They have a kicker on scholarship. I would imagine those are going to be your starters.
yeah. So, defensive back. So you brought up something actually right at the beginning of Larry Johnson's press conference breakdown that kind of goes hand in hand to me with the secondary. Just something I noticed from last year that I hope they improve a little bit on this year. That back when Halfley was here, they know. Even then, you know what Ohio State's defensive line wants to do. They want to come at you. They're coming at your quarterback. So the goal is to get the ball out of the Halfley's way to combat that. And even before Halfley, when Meyer was here, is always, you press as much as possible because that takes, those short passes away from people. It kind of hurt them in 2018 because they didn't have a good slot guy to cover the slot receivers, and a lot of teams beat them that way. Their outside guys still did fine, in my opinion, but that's where they were getting killed throughout the season. They fixed that with Halfley. So Halfley, we'll put Sean in, and we're gonna go basically face up against all these guys with our three corners and stuff. Last year, I think they played too much off the ball, and when you got a quarterback knows he's going to have pressure in his face, it's now easier pitching just throws if you don't have somebody on them.
Oh, I agree. And it's odd to me because that's something that Kerry never did that before. He had his guys up on people's faces.
So I don't know, maybe being in the NFL kind of mixed. I mean, because you're running so many different types of things. Maybe he thought he could do some of that stuff. And I think he just needs to kind of simplify it down, because even if the quarterback knows pressure's coming, if you got press coverage, then he still has to take an extra second before he can just throw it. And that's where you can get sacked in, quick throws and, or knocked down on quick throws. And Ohio State has feasted off of that for years where, all right, we're going to be coming at you, but we're not going to make that throw easy. So you're still going to have to take a second to think about it. And that's, in that second, I'm going to get to you. And, and maybe you'll get the ball out, maybe you won't, but I'm going to hit you and you're going to feel it, and it's not going to feel great. And so, and I think that's part of the thing. That I think that was some of the stuff that was missing last year. And maybe the defensive line got a little bit of blame on it, where I think some of that gets fixed just by, if the goal of an offense is to make quick throws because they know your defensive line is that incredible, then you got to do everything you can to take away those quick throws.
Right. I don't know if it's let's play off because they're going to throw quick and then we can react for an interception. I'd much rather just knock the balls down all day,
Yeah.
I mean, turnovers are great. Don't get me wrong. If you can do it, I would love the interception, but I don't like playing soft cover. There is no room to play soft when you got guys that they're throwing those balls out quickly because of your pressure.
To me, when you do soft coverage just to try to get reactionary interceptions, unless you jump them perfectly, a lot of times those aren't pick sixes. Where you get a lot more pick sixes, in my opinion, is when you get tipped balls and a linebacker or a safety runs up underneath it, or a corner, doesn't matter, any of those back guys, and they have because it's an easy run for them.
Right.
And, they run under and they get it. And to me, that's where you think about some of Ohio State's big interceptions over the last several years that went for touchdowns. A lot more of them were because of those situations than they were just because a corner jumped the route. And I'd much rather the corner play mean up on a guy. And I think a quarterback, unless you're just a stud quarterback, and in college, you're not playing that all the time, that you're just make them make the bad throws, and they're going to make the bad throws. And, you take your advantages when you get it. And if they don't make the bad throws, you're still going to get a lot of 3 outs. You're still going to be getting your offense on the field a lot. And that's the goal. It's to get the offense. That's the goal of the defense, is not to score touchdowns, is get the offense back on the field and let them go score touchdowns. So,
I mean, the only one I can actually think about that sticks in my memory is that the defensive back that was playing for an interception was Sean Wade last year against Indiana.
Yeah.
That's the only one that really sticks out to me. Because I even think the year before that, Arnett's big interception, I think he was, pressing the guy, and it was a bad throw. It was to him.
Yeah, he was to him. So, I mean, that's just my thing with I want to get back to that because then that takes away some of that quick throwing that,
you got big physical.
And then the defensive line can feast.
Yeah.
So
you got big physical backs too. There's no reason why you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like I said, and I'll harp on it again, like last year against Alabama or this year against Alabama, like Jalen Waddle couldn't even walk. Why were you playing 10 yards away from him? Like just put him on his ass to the next guy.
And then, when Devontae gets hurt and, Waddle can't, walk, there was opportunities in that game that they could have come back. And
you had to get up on those guys and try to force something.
All right, so on to the actual secondary of the player. So I think we're probably in agreement. It seems like that, Hellbang, Cam Brown, I know, is still coming back, but you would think that Brown, as long as he makes his full recovery, that him and a 7 are your corners.
Yeah, I think that's the consensus, is that they're really hoping Brown comes back healthy because they want him to be that guy. I just don't know, because he was never really in that role ever, and he got hurt. So I'm not sure, like a Legend Cavazos that has all that size, all that potential that they look for. Of course, they said, he's a little, I don't want to say like irresponsible, but he's a little erratic out there, that he's not showing like the consistency that they always want, but he's making the plays that, they want him to consistently make. I'm not sure that guy can't jump Cam Brown come season time, or maybe Cam Brown goes and, jumps Marcus Williams.
Yeah, that's those are all possibilities.
They said Denzel Burke's looking great because no one's there to practice.
Yeah.
So
I think Legend, I expect him to really be in the mix to, get playing time if he's not an outright starter, possibly getting a lot into the mix where he was in some sort of rotation, because I think this is, it sounds like from what we've been hearing from just the press conferences and some of the stuff we've been reading, that he is making progress and he is looking good. And, he was kind of, maybe came in a little too cocky last year and got,
he got whipped into shape a little bit.
Got some of your top 2 receivers kind of picked on him a little bit because they felt he was too cocky. But, hey, you need that. That's a learning lesson.
The hell, you learn from it. You get better. So, why not?
And it sounds like he is. It sounds like he's learning. He's possibly ready to take the next level. And he was a big time player coming in. And again, that's where I've been a little nervous from last year, and even with Akuda's year. And where Akuda and Arnett and Wade are phenomenal, but I didn't like the depth behind them at all. And I'm just like. And you felt like if one of those outside guys went down, you could always move Wade back to the outside, but then who's taking Wade's spot? Because the system's working so well. No, and I've always said you got to be flexible on that stuff. If you don't have a real, you need to get out of that 3 cornerback, 1 safety look and go back to 2 safeties. If your next 2 guys are your next best guy is a safety, play a more traditional offense or play a nickel thing. You can play nickel, you can play with a bullet. There's different things that they could do. So,
I would like to see them transition out of that defense anyways. I think
I would agree.
I think for the long run, for what's best in like title games, playoffs, I think it's best to get out of that defense anyways. I hope to God I never see a 4-4 again.
Yeah. And you could always, that stuff is
maybe Wisconsin.
Some of these guys, they can learn that stuff a week of practice. Hey, we're running a base 4-3 because we're playing Wisconsin this week, and fine, that's fine, whatever. Or
right.
Even Michigan, hey, they don't have they have 2 really small wide receivers and like 6 running backs. So we're going to be playing that nobody knows any of their names. So we're going to play a 4-3 against them because, that's the best defense to play in this unimaginative offense.
Be nice, Mike. That receiver was a water boy the week before and he got himself a scholarship. Yeah, I know, and not to go on a tangent, but I really I put this out there. Ohio State, I think their base defense should be some sort of nickel look. You're bigger, faster, stronger than everyone in the Big Ten anyways. If you really go up against one of the big boys that like to run on you, like you said, you could implement a 4-3 for 1 week. I don't think Wisconsin, if And even if Wisconsin starts pushing around your bullet, I think you can still make the change mid-game. I don't think Wisconsin can get enough, beat you down enough that you're like, oh crap, we're out of the game now against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I think that's something that you can still see if your nickel can beat them. And if it can't, then you can make an adjustment and get a third linebacker in.
Yeah. So yeah, with that stuff. So I like what I'm hearing about Legend. Marcus Williamson, I felt he was getting a little bit better as the year was going on.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd like to see how he now takes that to the next level. And then I want to see what some of these young guys can do. Who's behind Legend? Who's gonna,
Well, Ryan Watts is in the mix for one of those outside corners. Tyreek Johnson. Is he?
I don't know.
Is this it? Like,
I think he's getting passed personally, and now he could prove me wrong. It'll be interesting to see how the end of spring looks.
does Tyreek Johnson transfer by the end of spring?
I'm putting it.
You're on the spot.
I'm putting it at 50-50.
Okay.
Like that. I think that there's been a lot of talk from both press conferences and when you read from different some of the websites we belong to who have good sources within the program. It seems like there's a lot of love with some of the younger guys.
You don't hear anything about him.
I think that there's a strong possibility, but I would say it's 50-50. I'm not going to say that it's better percentage that he does transfer, even though my heart might say it is. So
okay, that's fair. I don't even feel comfortable in this discussion. I don't think we're going to do an actual too deep or depth chart projection.
No, I would like to
not yet.
Yeah, because I kind of feel the same way. I kind of think because Cam Brown ain't there, and I think Cam Brown right now is
they want him to be the starter.
They want him to be the starter, so he's probably not playing next week. So I don't think
I'm doubting Seven's playing if he's been hurt up to this point.
So those guys are out, and you got to figure they are the heads up to be the starter. So I don't want to do a depth chart. I mean, we'll talk about it some on the post game. Maybe we'll be able to give better insights. I have a much better feel. I think with I'd like to. The point is, I actually want to see more what the young guys can do because this is actually the real position now. I'm even this year afraid about the depth. Where
right.
My offensive line issues about depth has finally been answered over the last couple of years with the recruiting. The defensive line, I was scared about the defensive tackle depth. I'm not as scared today as after listening to LJ talk that I think that they've got legitimate depth there. I'm worried about what the outside depth for the corners are because, Cam Brown, Seven Banks, Legend. And, we've heard a lot of good things about Cam Martinez.
Yeah.
So
and we saw Lathan Ransom last year, but of course, he's more of a safety look or cover. Yeah. He's that cover guy, the slot guy, which I think Cam Martinez may be also, but they said Cam Martinez, you're going to he's everywhere.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited of what I've heard about him. His name's been brought up a few times within spring from some of the coaches. And
he's a player for sure.
So that's got me excited. And so I think that's just, where's the transition to the depth level?
It's crazy though. I mean, because how far are you removed from 2018 and just think one class that you get nobody and how far it sets your depth down.
It does. And that's why recruiting is so important, that you can't have a bad year at almost any position because that could really put you behind.
Because that's the year, right? You got 0 guys that year. And look, we're still talking about depth 3 years removed from that, 4 years removed from that.
And then because then you don't know, things could happen. You could get that 1 year of not getting any depth. You don't know what injuries are coming down the pike. And then,
who balls out and ends up being a draft pick,
and then oh my God, a pandemic hits, and now your whole world's changed,
right?
And that puts everybody behind.
And now, especially now, because when you think about the pandemic, how that's affected recruiting, even that that year. If you had a couple guys come in 2018, you wouldn't be looking like this right now because who knows who they've missed out on because they couldn't get someone on campus or because they couldn't go visit them.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot of question marks with the outside guys. I think we know who the top 3 are probably going, because I think Legend is there. I think he is in that top 3.
I've heard things about Ryan Watts. I don't think they've been over the top glowing remarks, but he's on the radar. It sounds like he's specifically been brought up by name. But so is Denzel Burke.
Yeah,
which I think that's very interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Because that's a true freshman.
And then I think we know between Marcus Williamson and Cam Martinez and
Lathan Ransom.
Lathan Ransom, there's some possibilities there that we've got some depth. It might be inexperienced depth, but there's some possibilities there with those younger guys behind.
I think Ransom starts there.
He could.
I mean,
I can see
unless they do, if they do a 2 safety look, I think Ransom's a starter on the team.
And if Ransom could play that position and kind of still be like the safety, that might be the smarter thing to go, because that kind of maybe gets you into more of what they did 2 years ago. If that's the way they still want to go, again, that's kind of Halfley's defense. If Combs is not comfortable coaching that way, then I would say you do. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I get it. Like, if that's the best fit, I agree. Like, that's what you should be doing. If Ransom, if the best thing to do is mimic Halfley's defense, do that. Like I said, I still kind of want them to get out of that look as their base defense. But if that's what is going to work out best for you, I think Ransom starting though at either that slot cornerback, or he's going to start as, a cover safety type position. I mean, I think if you look at big picture, or if you look at everybody, I really think you got Sevyn Banks, I think, is locked in as a starter. Josh Proctor is locked in as a starter. I think I want to say Cam Brown is locked in as a starter as well. I don't know right now, because he didn't get a ton of playing time and he was hurt, and someone might jump him. Who knows when it's an Achilles? We never know. I mean,
you don't know.
Tough Borland, Tough Borland had an Achilles. Master Teague had an Achilles. Neither one looked as fast that next season.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting to see how his speed holds up, his ability to turn on healing Achilles. Just real quickly on safety. So, I mean, I think Proctor's gonna he's gonna jump to the next level. I saw.
Is he finally gonna get a Malik Hooker year out of him? I know that's really high praise, but that's kind of like where he was coming in. What everyone thought, like, he was going to be the next Malik Hooker, and they've seen it over the years. It's shined in spring practice that they think that he's this ball hawk guy, and we've seen it during the games. He's in position to make the plays. So yeah,
I saw a lot towards the end of the season last year that I really do think he's taken the next step, and I'm expecting a lot out of him. I don't know if he's going to have all those interceptions that Hooker had.
Sure.
But I think he's going to be he likes to come up and mix it up with people. He likes getting the way of the pass. He's kind of like an all around type guy. He might be more even like Von Bell than he was even maybe Hooker.
Yeah,
which is great. I mean, I don't care.
I would take either one of those two in a heartbeat. So it's fine.
I just think he's going to take the next step, and that it'll be interesting to see what's next. Is it a second safety? Is it a third cornerback? Do they finally go to a nickel defense as more their base defense? I mean, there's a lot of
Craig Young's working out with safeties.
There's a lot of question marks now after that, but I think Proctor's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the back.
I think absolutely. I think he's going to be the best safety in America, and I know that's high praise, but I think he's ready to shine. So right now, penciled in as starters. I know we're not going to do a depth chart. Banks, Proctor are for sure.
Yeah.
Are they the only for sure starters that you can think of right now?
Yeah, I think so.
Or you think Brown, regardless, is
I'm 50-50 on Brown. I agree. Banks and Proctor, I'm definitely 90% sure that they're definitely the starters. Sevyn, I saw a lot of good things from Sevyn last year. There was he didn't make anything. It wasn't necessarily easy. I know there's a lot of people that want to get on Sean. Neither of the outside positions were an easy throw for any quarterback last year.
No.
And that, I mean, Sevyn made some mistakes, but he made a lot of
good plays too.
So, I mean, even though you think about that one catch that the only good throw that Trevor Lawrence had down the field in that game, he was in good position, and it was in that first touchdown,
the first drive,
and and he had a good pass to that outside receiver, and but Banks was right there with him, and he was in good position. It was just a better throw and a better catch, and
that'll happen.
That happens.
I mean, it does happen.
So I think we're in good shape with Sevyn. I want to see Cam Brown. I thought looked really good the year prior to that when he got in. Now, is he ready to,
It's got to get healthy
he's
first.
got to get healthy. And what does that Achilles do to him? It could be legend there. But I would say if we're just talking about, I think, yeah. The one guy at safety is Proctor, one of the calm porter there. Proctor and Banks are definitely, I think you're definitely penciled in. And then the other two spots are kind of up in the air.
A lot of interesting stuff to think about. I think we'll have a clearer picture after the spring game. We're going to see some stuff from some guys, and we'll see kind of like, obviously who's the ones and who's the twos. So I think we're going to get a good picture of that and have a better idea. But I agree. I would have those two penciled in right now, and I think it's honestly open competition everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Marcus Williamson, which I think Marcus Williamson's a fine player, but I don't know. I think Ransom might be a special player.
Oh, I agree with that. I think he could be that. He might be the best player if that's ultimately they want a guy that could be kind of like a hybrid corner and safety. He might be the better choice to be put in that position.
And it sounds like Cam Martinez is a freaking ball hawk from what I've heard. Yeah. So I don't know how you can keep that guy off the field if that's actually, if that's what he is.
Yeah. All right. I think that was pretty good. You go.
All right, let's get out of here. So thank you everyone for coming in, stopping in today at the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
I'm Mike.
OH. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added. And please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.